The constant partying was not enough to distract Sammy from work. In February 1972, Davis recorded The Candyman, a song from the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Much to Davis's surprise, The Candyman became a #1 hit. Then fellow singer Tom Jones suggested that Sammy record the tune Mr. Bojangles. Davis resisted. The lyrics struck too close to home.
Sammy always hated the song because it really was talking about one of his greatest fears, of being broke, because he was always overextended in the millions. He just hated the fact that it was about a broken down singer.
But Davis knew a good melody when he heard it, and so did his listeners. Although Sammy's recording of Mr. Bojangles never charted, the song received massive airplay and became a favorite of his fans. At 46, Davis was suddenly hot once again. President Richard Nixon invited Sammy to join the National Advisory Council on Economic Opportunity. Davis agreed and promptly incurred the wrath of many Democratic friends.
The Kennedys wouldn't take his calls. People like Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine at least went to him and said, Sam, why are you doing this? Why are you with Nixon? And she said, I just wanted to hear it. But they all cut him off.
It's crazy how they would sit there and start with him because he was in an interracial marriage. But when he goes on with his life, all of a sudden, they get angry with him. They started this.
Sammy bridged all ethnic groups, and it was important to Nixon to appear to have a relationship with Sammy Davis, because here was Nixon, who was the ultimate square, being involved even on a social basis with the ultimate trendy, hip, cutting-edge cool, you know. Sammy defined cool before we had a word for it.
The Republicans at that point in time needed, or thought they needed, a, quote, black celebrity superstar. And the only reason I think that Sam got involved with them was because after Bobby Kennedy died, he carried this wound forever. And the Republicans were smart enough to ask him. The Democrats weren't asking him, because at that point, the Democrats thought he was Uncle Tom.
Davis was stung by the criticism. Nonetheless, the entertainer felt he could use his presidential connection for social good. Davis heard that African-American GIs in Vietnam were suffering harsher punishment than whites for minor drug infractions. In the spring of 1972, Davis brought the problem to Nixon's attention, and soon Sammy was heading to Vietnam.
He went to Vietnam as Richard Nixon's ambassador. He went to entertain the troops.
When Davis returned, Nixon invited him to a rally at the 1972 Republican National Convention in Miami. Friend Shirley Rhodes.
And when Richard Nixon came on the stage, he said that Sammy was a true American who could not be bought, that he was not for sale. And Sammy, being as emotional as he was, ran up behind him and grabbed him and hugged him. And that was all there was to it.
A photograph of Davis hugging Nixon went around the world.
And the magazines and the newspapers and the entire country was absolutely in an uproar.
Everyone had an opinion, mostly negative.
Tell me your opinion about this in the comments.
I can't speak for all the people of why they were upset. Maybe the blacks were upset because he hugged a white president that was Republican, and everybody at that time maybe were Democrats who were black. Some of his friends kind of reneged on him, hurt his pride.
When I saw that photograph, I became wild. I literally did not speak to him for 9 months.
But Nixon did something for Davis the Democrats never did.
Nixon invited Sammy to the White House, and Sammy was the first black man to sleep in the Lincoln bedroom. And he slept real good.
By that time, Frank Sinatra was voting Republican. Sinatra was one of the few Davis cronies who was not bothered by Sammy's endorsement of Nixon. But Frank was disturbed by something else.
Frank eventually became very upset with Sam. One, his lifestyle. Two, the fact he was using a lot of stimulants. And Frank says, you are abusing a God-given talent that is indeed divine, and you have no right to do that. And so Frank really came down hard on Sammy.
Frank was particularly angry about Sammy's use of cocaine.
Frank was totally opposed to it, and when he heard about it, he said, "I'm not speaking to him until he gives up that stuff. It's just not acceptable." Frank was very straight. He would have nothing to do with drugs.
Sinatra gave Davis the cold shoulder for 3 years. Finally, Altavis and Frank's wife Barbara arranged a private dinner at Caesar's Palace.
And as soon as they sat down, Frank said, "Come on, let's go talk." And they went over to another booth, and he said, "Look," he said, you're killing your friends." He said, you're doing something that's no good for you. You got all the talent in the world." Sammy couldn't believe what he was hearing, and he was in tears.
I think they were like brothers. It was a love-hate relationship, but they loved each other more than blood.
Frank said, "Look, we never lied to each other, ever." And Sammy said, "No." He said, "And I know if you tell me you're going to give it up, you're going to give it up." And he said, "Yeah, I'll give it up, Frank." And he did. That was the last of it from then on.
Frank should have made Sammy promise to give up booze. Sammy's alcohol intake was serious enough to put him in the hospital with an enlarged liver in late 1983.
If you're going to be Berezhnikov, you can't drink yourself till your liver is extended beyond your belt buckle. And the doctor said, you take one more drink, you die.
I was frightened, and I was told that I was this close to having cirrhosis.
57-year-old Sammy gave up the sauce for a while.
I used to worry because he was always sipping something, and he shouldn't have been. I never can say that I saw Sammy inebriated or drunk, but he always had that comfort glass by him.
I'd say to him, don't do this. You're killing us. Why? Don't do anything. Retire for a year. I can't retire for a year. You're crazy. Blah, blah, blah. The only thing that he knew how to do was perform.
But performing took its toll. In 1984, the 58-year-old entertainer underwent the first of 2 hip replacements. Remarkably, Davis recovered completely and returned to dancing.
I was around him during his hip operations, and it was another bump in the road to Sam. It wasn't a huge hill. It wasn't oh my God, it was, I have to do this, I have to go into the hospital, I have to get this done.
Unfortunately, Sammy's financial health was not as easy to fix. Years of over-the-top spending were starting to catch up with Davis and his business partner, Cy Marsh.
Tell me something, why do you think it was so hard for him to give up the party life? The drinking and the constant spending.
Finally, the IRS nailed Davis for 5 years' worth of back taxes.
Sammy did not pay attention to things that were unattractive to him or not appealing to him. If they weren't appealing to him and they didn't fit into his mindset at the moment, he just wouldn't deal with it.
And so began a battle with the government, a battle Sammy could not win.
See, Sammy had made such major income that they held on to him. They knew that they keep dragging money out of him all the time, that maybe they'll get back more than he deducted as it's a disaster.
The money problems just made Davis work harder. In December 1987, 72-year-old Sinatra, 70-year-old Dean Martin, and 62-year-old Sammy announced a Rat Pack reunion titled the Together Again Tour. This time there would be no end.
Tell me something, who do you think, if someone was to start the Rat Pack again, who do you think would be the people that would be best befitting for that? Let me know in the comments.
NAACP jokes.
Now, Frank, Dean, they look at me as an adult, and certainly at the age of 63, I would hope that they would look at me that way.
When Martin dropped out at the last minute, Sinatra and Davis called on their old friend, Liza Minnelli.
It was just too much for Dean. Dean was always, in the later years, more fragile than Sammy or Frank.
Retitled The Ultimate Event, the tour played to sold-out audiences across the United States. But plans to continue in Mexico and Asia never came to pass. Coming up, Sammy's final curtain call.
Just before he died, he said, "Listen, I'm 64 years old. I lived the life of a man of 164.
Please share your thoughts about this video in the comments. Be sure to like, share, watch more videos, and subscribe. to the channel.